Ever get that, like, gut feeling about someone? You know, a sense that something just isn't right. That's what we're diving into today. A story where people close to Stacey Peterson, they felt that unease, but their warnings, well, no one seemed to listen. It's a deep dive, this one, folks. This case, it'll stay with you, even after you finish listening.
Yeah, it really drives home how important it is, to trust those gut feelings and listen to people when they say something's off, even if it's not like super obvious at first.
So at the center of this deep dive, we have Stacey Peterson. Vanished. Gone. From her home just outside Chicago back in 2007. And her husband, Drew Peterson. He was a police officer, seasoned, and he claims she just ran off with another guy. But we're going to dig deeper, right? And we're going to find is, well, a lot more troubling a story than that.
One of the things that makes this case so interesting, right, is that it's not just about Stacey disappearing. It's also about Drew's wife before her, Kathleen. First, they said it was an accident, her death. But then, after Stacey went missing, they changed it, called it a homicide.
So to really get this whole thing, we got to go back to Stacey as a kid. She had, well, a rough start, a lot of instability, losing two sisters really young, can you imagine? One in a house fire, another to SIDs.
Awful. Just awful tragedies for any family, and from what we know, it seems like her parents, they really struggled to cope. There were even reports, get this, of Stacey as a little toddler wandering outside alone, even in winter. Really paints a picture of a family, in crisis.
Yeah, and it didn't get much better for her as a teenager either. Her mom, just gone, vanished, and they think she was murdered by the guy she was living with at the time. But the police didn't really take it seriously.
It's like a pattern, right? People close to Stacey trying to raise concerns and no one's listening. Sadly, this keeps going, even into her adult life. I mean, she was so determined to have a stable family, a loving one, her own. I think that's part of what drew her to Drew Peterson. He was older, that authority figure, offered that security maybe she was looking for.
But Drew, oh, his past was far from stable. Fourth marriage, this was. And his third wife, Kathleen. She died under, well, suspicious circumstances a few years before Stacey disappeared.
And there were already whispers, even back then, about Drew. Controlling, abusive, especially in past relationships. One of his ex-wives even said he told her he knew how to kill someone and make it look like an accident. Chilling stuff. Starts to build a very disturbing picture.
And those whispers, they got louder when Kathleen got this anonymous letter, revealed Drew was having an affair with Stacey while she was still underage, a police officer, with a teenager. That's a huge red flag, right? Talk about an imbalance of power.
And that letter, it led to their divorce, Kathleen and Drew. But messy, volatile, the whole thing, calls about domestic disturbance and an order of protection, which, by the way, Drew ignored multiple times. It seemed like Kathleen, no matter what she did, couldn't escape him, his control.
And you can feel her fear so clearly in this letter she wrote to the Attorney General's office. It details everything, the threats, the violence. She even wrote, and this is just chilling, he knows how to manipulate the system, and his next step is to take my children away or kill me instead. Heartbreaking, knowing what happened to her.
And just a few months after she wrote that, Kathleen was found, dead in her bathtub. They said accidental drowning initially, but this is before Stacey disappeared.
Right, exactly. Once Stacey vanished and Drew became the main suspect, they took another look at Kathleen's death. Didn't add up, and finally they changed it. Homicide. Like puzzle pieces falling into place, but way too late for Kathleen.
So this is where things get really interesting, legally speaking, at least. We got to talk about hearsay evidence. Not everyone's familiar with legal terms, right? Basically, it's when someone's saying what someone else said, someone who's not, actually there in court.
So in this case, Kathleen and Stacey, they're gone, right? So their own words can't be used. But what they told others about Drew, his threats, his actions, that became super important.
Exactly. It was a really big deal legally, and not everyone loved it, this strategy. The defense, they said, hey, this hearsay stuff, not reliable, shouldn't be allowed. But the judge, he saw how unique this case was, and he said, yeah, we're letting it in.
And through all those people, friends, family, even that pastor Stacey talked to, a picture of Drew, it started coming together. And it wasn't just like one-off incidents. It was a whole pattern of control, manipulation, all of it.
Yeah, like Kathleen's divorce lawyer, he talked about how afraid she was of Drew, how she really believed he could hurt her. And then there were these journal entries. Kathleen kept him, really detailed stuff. Drew's abuse, his threats, all written down. Haunting reading that. A woman trapped, you can just feel it.
And it goes beyond just people close to Kathleen and Stacey. Remember Tom? Drew's stepbrother.
Oh, yeah, Tom.
His testimony, right?
Yeah.
Helping Drew move that big, heavy blue barrel the night Stacy vanished. Added a whole other layer to this whole thing.
No kidding. Wasn't like direct proof or anything, but definitely raised some eyebrows. Why all the secrecy, right? Why late at night? If Drew is innocent, why all that? Prosecution said it was him, getting rid of evidence.
But the defense, they had their side, of course. They said the whole case against Drew, just speculation, circumstantial. No physical proof, they said, tying him to either Kathleen or Stacy.
And that's where the whole hearsay thing comes in. That and building this idea of like, what kind of person was Drew? The prosecution, they had to convince the jury, say, look, no smoking gun here, but all this evidence, this pattern, it points to Drew and him being guilty.
And in the end, the jury, they agreed. Drew Peterson, guilty. First-degree murder for killing Kathleen Savio. Huge case this was. Showed that even without, the typical physical evidence, you could still build a case. Using those pieces, the circumstances, and the hearsay, those stories people told.
But even with him being found guilty, still felt like something was missing, right? Stacy was still out there, somewhere, no charges for her case.
And Drew, even in prison, still says he's innocent. Both cases. But then another twist. An inmate comes forward.
Oh, yeah, this guy. He said Drew tried to hire him to kill the prosecutor. The one who put him away, John Glasgow. Drew, still trying to control things, even from behind bars.
The authorities, they took this seriously, set up a whole sting, wired the inmate, recorded the conversations.
And, well, you can guess what happened. Drew walked right into it, laid out this whole plan to have Glasgow killed, more charges, longer sentence. That's where Drew Peterson is now.
And Stacy. Still missing. But her sister Cassandra, she hasn't given up. Still searching, still believing she'll bring her sister home someday. It's easy to get lost in all the legal stuff, right? But we can't forget about the people, the real people hurt by all of this. Kathleen and Drew, they had 2 sons together. And Stacy had a son and a daughter with Drew, too. These kids, they lost their mothers under the worst possible circumstances.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And you gotta think about Drew's other kids, too, from his earlier marriages, right? They lost a stepmom. And then to find out what their dad did, that's gotta be rough. So much pain, rippling out, touching all these lives.
It makes you think, about how domestic violence, it doesn't just stop with the person who's directly hurt. It goes on, breaks up families, scars kids. It's a cycle that can be really hard to break.
And what gets me about this case is that Drew, even after they found him guilty, no remorse, really. There are these reports he'd say these callous things, even from prison, like saying his kids didn't need mothers. I mean, how do you even wrap your head around that?
It's like he's just, narcissistic.
Yeah.
Can't see past himself, the pain he caused. All about control, manipulating people, looking good. Thankfully, his kids had other people who stepped up.
Oh, yeah, Stephen. Drew's oldest, he took care of his younger siblings, gave them some kind of stability, normalcy. So different from all that chaos their dad created.
Stephen's a strong one, that's for sure. Shows you how powerful family can be, even with all that tragedy going on. A little bit of hope, of love, shining through even the darkest times.
And as much as Drew's locked up for a long time, there's still this, this unsettled feeling. Because they never found Stacy's body. For her family, her friends, that's gotta be so hard. Not knowing.
That's where Cassandra comes in. Stacy's sister, right. She hasn't stopped. All these years still searching, still believes she'll find her. And recently, she's using this sonar technology, searching a canal in Chicago. Got people talk about the case again. Even though, gotta say, the authorities haven't been too quick to follow up on what she found.
Yeah, it shows you how important family is in these cases. When someone goes missing, they keep the pressure on, make sure their loved one isn't forgotten.
Well, here we are, wrapping up our deep dive into Stacy Peterson's disappearance. And honestly, I'm feeling a lot of things. Sadness for the lives lost, anger that this kind of injustice can happen, but also a lot of respect for those who keep fighting for the truth, for some kind of closure.
This case, it really lays it all bare, doesn't it? How damaging domestic violence can be, how tricky the legal system is, and how crucial it is to listen to people when they say something's wrong. But it also shows you how strong people can be, how love, how pure determination can keep going even when they've lost so much.
We've covered a lot of ground today, but there's always more to learn, If you're interested in this case, there's tons of stuff out there, online, in libraries, you name it. And if you or someone you know is going through something similar, dealing with abuse, please remember, you're not alone. There's help out there. Reach out, talk to someone. Your voice matters, and you deserve to be heard. Thanks for being with us on this deep dive.